Tonight, we step quietly into a world where love and loyalty were threads woven tightly into the fabric of daily life, but not as we know them today. This is not a story of effortless romance or simple promises whispered under moonlight. Instead, it is a journey through a time when devotion meant duty, when bonds were as much about survival as about the heart, and where every choice carried weight beyond personal desire. Imagine the medieval world, castles towering against gray skies, bustling villages wrapped in the scent of hearth fires, and a society ruled by codes older than the stones beneath your feet. Here, love was not merely an emotion, but a force shaped by honor, faith, and necessity. Loyalty was both shield and chain, binding lords to vassals, families to fortunes, and hearts to the unyielding rhythms of their time. Tonight, you won't just hear about love and loyalty in medieval times. You'll feel their complexity, their beauty, and their burden. We'll walk softly through grand halls and humble homes, across battlefields stained with valor and betrayal, into chapels where prayers for faithfulness echoed, and through the quiet moments where hearts dared to hope. Welcome to what love and loyalty meant in medieval times and more. A slow, thoughtful journey into the hidden depths of human connection in an age both distant and deeply familiar. So settle in, breathe deeply, and let the stories of devotion and duty gently unfold around you, one whispered secret at a time. Foundations of Fidelity, Introduction to Love and Loyalty in Medieval Society, the complex web of bonds and devotions. When we think of love today, our minds often wander to tender moments between two people. A glance, a touch, a whispered word of affection. But in the medieval world, love was something far more intricate, complex, and woven tightly into every aspect of life. It was not merely a feeling reserved for romance, but a powerful force that governed family ties, political alliances, religious devotion, and social order. To understand what love and loyalty meant in medieval times, we must first unravel the complex web of bonds that shaped society itself. Medieval society was built on hierarchies of birth, rank, and duty, where loyalty was not just an ideal but a necessity for survival. Lords and vassals, kings and knights, husbands and wives, parents and children. Each relationship carried expectations that went far beyond the personal. Love, in its many forms, was inseparable from loyalty, honor, and faith. At the heart of these bonds was the idea that loyalty was a binding contract, not one signed on paper, but a sacred agreement, often sealed with oaths taken before God. These oaths could be sworn between a lord and his vassal, promising protection and service, between a husband and wife, pledging mutual care and fidelity, or within the family, binding generations together in shared duty and inheritance. Breaking such a vow was not just betrayal, it was a sin and a social crime that could destroy reputations and shatter entire communities. Religion played a central role in shaping medieval ideas of love and loyalty. The Christian faith, which permeated nearly every corner of medieval Europe, emphasized virtues such as charity, faithfulness, and obedience. Marriage was seen as a sacred sacrament, a divine covenant reflecting Christ's love for the church. Thus, love was elevated to a spiritual ideal, but one that was also deeply practical. Marriage served not only to unite two souls, but to secure alliances, consolidate power, and ensure the continuation of bloodlines. Romantic love as a distinct concept began to blossom in the courts of medieval nobility through the phenomenon we now call courtly love. This idealized form of love celebrated admiration from afar, often between a knight and a noblewoman who might already be married. It was poetic, secretive, and charged with emotion, but it coexisted with the realities of arranged marriages and political strategy. The love of courtly tradition was more about devotion, honor, and the ennobling power of longing than about practical companionship. In contrast, the love between family members was equally vital, but expressed differently. Parents were expected to love and protect their children, but they also wielded strict authority, enforcing obedience and discipline. Children were raised with a clear understanding of their place in the social order and the importance of loyalty to their kin and lord. Inheritance was a crucial matter, as property and titles passed from one generation to the next, binding families together across time. Familial love was intertwined with duty and the survival of the family name. Loyalty to one's lord or king was perhaps the most public and political expression of fidelity. Feudalism, The defining social system of the medieval period was built on mutual obligations of loyalty and service. A vassal pledged fealty to a lord, promising military support and counsel, while the lord offered protection and land. This reciprocal relationship was not only political, but deeply personal, binding individuals to each other in a network of trust and dependence. Betrayal was considered a grave offense, often punished harshly, because it threatened the fragile balance of medieval society. Within marriage, love and loyalty took on both personal and societal dimensions. While marriage was often arranged to strengthen political or economic ties, the emotional bonds that developed within those marriages could be profound. Wives were expected to be faithful and dutiful, managing the household and bearing heirs. Husbands were protectors and providers, though their roles could be complicated by their own ambitions and the temptations of courtly love. Divorce was rare and difficult, as marriage was seen as indissoluble before God, so loyalty meant lifelong commitment, even when love itself was tested. Beyond the walls of noble courts and castles, among peasants and townsfolk, love and loyalty were no less important, but took different forms. Community ties, neighborly support, and mutual aid were expressions of loyalty that helped sustain lives in a harsh and uncertain world. Love for one's family remained central, and faith in God offered comfort and guidance. In a world marked by disease, war, and scarcity, the bonds of loyalty were lifelines that connected individuals to a larger whole. Understanding medieval love and loyalty also means recognizing the power dynamics at play. Gender roles were strictly defined, and women's loyalty was often tied to submission to fathers, husbands, and sons. Their ability to express love on their own terms was constrained by social expectations. Men's loyalty was linked to honor, bravery, and leadership. Yet even within these roles, there were moments of tenderness, sacrifice, and genuine affection that remind us of the humanity behind the history. Medieval literature and poetry offer windows into these complex feelings. From the tragic tales of star-crossed lovers to the hymns of religious devotion, these works reveal how people grappled with love and loyalty in their lives. They show love as a force that could inspire great courage or cause great suffering, and loyalty as a virtue that could bind or break the strongest of hearts. As we begin this journey into the world of medieval love and loyalty, we will explore the many faces of devotion, from the intimate to the political, the spiritual to the passionate. We will see how these ancient bonds shaped lives and legacies, and how the echoes of these medieval ideals still resonate in our modern understanding of what it means to love and be loyal. So settle in and let us unfold this tapestry of hearts and oaths, of promises and faith, a story not only of history, but of humanity itself. Blood ties and bound hearts, the role of family loyalty, honor, duty, and betrayal in medieval households. In medieval society, family was far more than a group of related individuals living under one roof. It was the foundation upon which all other loyalties and social structures were built. Blood ties were sacred, a bond that shaped identity, dictated duty, and determined one's place in the world. Family loyalty was not just expected, it was demanded, enforced, and revered. From noble houses that ruled lands and forged alliances to peasant families eking out a living on hard soil, the essence of medieval life revolved around the intricate web of obligations that connected kin. For noble families, loyalty was intertwined with honor and political survival. A noble house was a fortress of power, reputation, and legacy. The head of the family, often the lord or lady of the manor, bore the responsibility of maintaining that legacy through careful management of land, wealth, and alliances. Every marriage arranged, every child raised, and every dispute settled had implications far beyond personal happiness. The success or failure of a family could ripple through regions, sparking wars or peace treaties. Children were raised with a keen awareness of their responsibilities. Sons were groomed to inherit titles, lands, and the burdens of leadership. They learned not only the arts of war and governance, but also the weight of upholding family honor. Daughters, while often excluded from direct rule, became crucial pawns in political strategy, their marriages carefully negotiated to secure alliances or peace. Their loyalty was expected to shift as they moved from their birth family to their husband's household, a transition both physical and emotional. Yet beneath the surface of duty and decorum, the reality of family life could be fraught with tension. Rivalries for inheritance, jealousy between siblings, and conflicts over loyalty to different branches of a family sometimes erupted into bitter feuds. Betrayal within a noble household was not only a personal tragedy, but a political crisis. Disloyalty could mean loss of favor, exile, or even death. To protect their name and power, families employed a strict code of conduct, where silence and secrecy often hid fractures beneath polished surfaces. In contrast, peasant families faced a different but equally demanding reality. Their loyalty was centered around survival, the hard work of tilling fields, tending animals, and supporting one another in the face of famine, disease, and harsh rulers. Life was a daily struggle, but family was the most reliable source of protection and comfort. Elders passed down knowledge and tradition, while children learned to contribute to the household from a young age. The peasant family was often a tight-knit unit, bound by shared hardship and mutual dependence. Loyalty meant tending the sick, sharing food, and standing together against external threats. Yet even here, breaking trust could have severe consequences. A member who betrayed the family by stealing, deserting, or engaging in forbidden relationships risked ostracism or punishment, jeopardizing the entire household's standing within the village. Medieval concepts of honor and loyalty also extended to care for the vulnerable within families. Widows, orphans, and the elderly relied on kinship networks for protection and provision. While society's safety nets were limited, family ties provided a measure of security. However, this loyalty was conditional. The family's ability to support depended on resources and status. In times of hardship, difficult decisions had to be made, sometimes at great emotional cost. Marriage was a pivotal moment in the life of any medieval family. It was not simply a union of two people, but a formal alliance between families. Negotiations over dowries, land, and status underscored the political nature of these bonds. Loyalty to one's natal family was expected to endure, even as a new loyalty to the spouse's family arose. This dual loyalty could create tensions and competing demands, especially for women navigating their roles as daughters, wives, and mothers. Religious beliefs also shaped family loyalty. The church emphasized the sanctity of the family unit and the moral duties of each member. Prayers for the health and salvation of relatives reinforced a spiritual dimension to familial love. Funerary rituals and commemorations kept the memory of ancestors alive, strengthening bonds across generations. The idea of family extended beyond the living, binding people to their past and future in a continuum of loyalty. The consequences of breaking family loyalty were often severe. Medieval law, both secular and ecclesiastical, protected family interests through codes of inheritance, marriage, and criminal justice. Adultery, for instance, was not just a private matter, but a betrayal of family honor, with legal and social repercussions. Blood feuds could erupt from disputes over loyalty, leading to cycles of violence that could last decades. In extreme cases, families were disinherited, exiled, or destroyed. Yet amidst these pressures, medieval families also knew moments of profound affection and tenderness. Letters, poetry, and chronicles reveal glimpses of parents mourning lost children, young siblings sharing secrets, and spouses expressing genuine love and companionship. These personal bonds added texture to the broader patterns of duty and honor, reminding us that medieval people were as capable of deep feeling as any other time in history. By exploring the role of family loyalty in medieval society, we gain insight into a world where love and duty were inseparable, where every gesture was loaded with meaning, and where the fate of many rested on the fragile ties of kinship. In understanding these bonds, we come closer to comprehending the complex humanity of the past, a humanity shaped by love, loyalty, and the enduring struggle to protect those closest to us. The language of longing, courtly love and its ideals, secrecy, chivalry, and devotion in medieval romance. In the intricate dance of medieval love, one of the most enchanting and enduring themes was that of courtly love. Born in the refined courts of 12th century southern France, courtly love painted romance in hues far beyond mere marriage arrangements or familial duty. It was a language of longing and idealization, where love was both a secret and a sacred quest, one that demanded devotion, courage, and discretion. It gave rise to troubadours singing laments and praises, knights composing poetry, and noblewomen inspiring passion and chivalry. Courtly love was not a simple affair. It was wrapped in paradoxes and coded behaviors. It celebrated a love that was often extramarital or unattainable, a secret flame that burned quietly in the shadows of social convention. It was love that elevated the beloved, typically a noble lady, to an almost divine status, idealizing her virtues, grace, and beauty. The lover, often a knight or nobleman, was both humbled and ennobled by his passion, compelled to acts of bravery and refined manners in her honor. This idealized love was highly ritualized. It demanded secrecy, not only because it sometimes defied social norms, but also because its power came from its mystery. Lovers exchanged coded messages, tokens, and songs, all carefully crafted to express emotions that could not be spoken openly. The very act of longing was a form of devotion, where the lover's suffering became proof of his sincerity and worthiness. The role of the troubadour was central in spreading and shaping the ideals of courtly love. These poet-musicians traveled across courts, performing songs that celebrated love's joys and agonies with exquisite sensitivity. Their verses wove intricate metaphors and symbolisms, blending religious imagery with earthly passion. Through their art, courtly love transcended social classes and became a cultural movement influencing literature, music, and even the behavior of the nobility. Chivalry, the code that governed knights, was deeply intertwined with courtly love. The ideals of honor, loyalty, and courage found new meaning when linked to the service of a beloved lady. Knights undertook quests and battles not only for glory or duty, but as acts of devotion to the woman they admired. Their armor gleamed with the promise of fidelity, and their hearts were sworn to protect and honor her name. Yet courtly love was not always a joyous celebration. It often dwelled in longing and frustration, emphasizing the emotional intensity of desire without fulfillment. The beloved was frequently unattainable, a married lady, a distant figure, or a social superior. This distance created a bittersweet tension, a sense that love was both the sweetest blessing and a source of profound pain. This romantic ideal had complex social implications. While it inspired poetry and noble conduct, it also existed alongside the realities of arranged marriages, political alliances, and strict social hierarchies. For many, courtly love was a private escape, a fantasy world separate from the obligations of daily life. For others, it was a genuine emotional experience that reshaped relationships and expectations. Women's roles within courtly love were equally nuanced. Noble women, who were the objects of affection, wielded considerable influence through their beauty, wit, and patronage of the arts. They often shaped the court's culture by setting standards of grace and refinement. Yet their agency was limited by social norms, and their participation in courtly love was frequently confined to symbolic and subtle expressions rather than open declarations. The legacy of courtly love extends beyond the medieval period. Its influence can be traced in the evolution of romantic literature, the idea of love as ennobling and transformative, and the very ways we think about relationships today. It introduced the concept that love could be a powerful, almost sacred force, one that inspires personal growth and moral striving. Understanding courtly love invites us to see medieval romance not merely as archaic or restrictive, but as a rich, complex expression of human emotion and social aspiration. It reveals a world where love was both a language and a mystery, where secrecy enhanced desire, and where loyalty was tested not only by duty, but by the heart's deepest longings. So as we listen to the echoes of troubadour songs and the whispered vows exchanged in castle chambers, we glimpse the vibrant, poetic world of courtly love, a world where love was a journey of honor, sacrifice, and endless yearning. Alliances of the heart and throne, marriage as political strategy, the complex dance of duty and desire. In the medieval world, marriage was far more than a personal or romantic affair. It was a crucial instrument of political strategy, social stability, and economic security. For nobles and commoners alike, marriage was an alliance, a carefully negotiated contract designed to bind families, consolidate power, secure property, and forge peace. Love, when it appeared, was often a fragile afterthought amid the demands of duty, inheritance, and social expectation. From the grandest royal dynasties to the humblest villages, The institution of marriage was governed by practical considerations. Marriages were arranged by families, not by the individuals who would live the union. Parents, guardians, or feudal lords negotiated terms that included dowries, land transfers, political allegiances, and social rank. The bride's family often provided a dowry, a valuable contribution of money, goods, or land, which symbolized the economic and social value of the union. For noble families, marriage was a tool to forge alliances that could alter the balance of power across kingdoms. A well-arranged marriage might seal a treaty, bring peace to warring factions, or unite vast estates. For monarchs, the marriage of their children was a diplomatic act with far-reaching consequences, influencing relations between powerful houses and neighboring states. In this context, marriage was a strategic chess move, with personal feelings secondary to the greater political game. The wedding ceremony itself was a public event laden with symbolism. It was a contract witnessed by the community, the church, and secular authorities, affirming mutual obligations and rights. The church's role was pivotal, as it sanctified the union, imparted spiritual significance, and enforced the legal framework of marriage. Consent was necessary, at least formally, but coercion in arranged matches were common, reflecting the collective interests of families rather than individual desire. For commoners, while marriages were less tied to grand political schemes, economic necessity still dictated many decisions. Land tenure, guild memberships, and village standing influenced marriage choices. Dowries and bride prices were often essential to ensure financial security or to strengthen a family's local position. In many cases, practical concerns over survival and community relations outweighed romantic notions. Yet beneath these pragmatic layers, human emotions stirred. Love, attraction, and affection did exist within arranged marriages, sometimes blossoming into deep companionship and loyalty. But it was equally common for spouses to live apart or for unions to remain distant and transactional. Divorce was rare and difficult, bound by both secular and ecclesiastical laws, making marriage a lifelong contract regardless of personal happiness. The tension between love and duty was a silent but persistent theme. Medieval literature and chronicles reveal stories of secret romances, forbidden desires, and tragic misunderstandings, underscoring the human cost of political marriages. In some cases, spouses sought solace in friendship, shared religious devotion, or quiet acceptance. In others, jealousy, betrayal, and cruelty marked the union, demonstrating that marriage was as complex and varied as the individuals involved. Gender roles within marriage were sharply defined. Men held legal authority and control over property, while women were often expected to manage households, bear children, and secure the lineage. Noblewomen could wield significant influence as mothers, regents, or patrons of the arts, but their power was largely exercised within the framework of marriage and family. The production of heirs was paramount, as dynastic continuity ensured the survival of bloodlines and estates. Dowries, in particular, symbolized a woman's value and the economic dimension of marriage. They could include money, jewelry, land, or livestock, and their size and quality affected a woman's marriage prospects. The dowry also served as a form of security for the wife, providing resources she could potentially reclaim in widowhood. For families, a generous dowry could elevate their status and secure advantageous matches. Negotiations over marriage contracts were intricate affairs, involving legal representatives, clergy, and advisors. Terms were carefully drafted to protect the interests of both families, stipulating rights to inheritance, guardianship of children, and conditions for dowry return. These contracts reflected the fusion of personal lives with the political and economic structures of medieval society. Marriage also intersected deeply with religion. The church promoted marriage as a sacrament, a holy covenant that bound two souls in spiritual unity. Church teachings emphasized fidelity, obedience, and mutual support, elevating marriage beyond a mere social contract. Yet the church's views sometimes conflicted with secular practices, especially concerning consanguinity, marriage between close relatives, and the morality of certain unions. Despite the church's idealization of marriage, medieval society witnessed numerous exceptions and complexities. Some couples sought dispensations to marry relatives or to overcome social barriers. Others practiced concubinage or informal unions, reflecting the gap between doctrine and daily life. The realities of medieval marriage were often messier than the idealized images portrayed in literature or church doctrine. For common folk, marriage was also intertwined with community and social networks. Weddings were occasions for celebration, feasting, and reinforcing communal bonds. Marriage connected families not only by blood, but by reciprocal obligations and shared responsibilities. The local village or manor was both the backdrop and the enforcer of marital norms, where gossip, custom, and kinship shaped individual experience. In summary, medieval marriage was a complex interplay of duty and desire, politics and personal emotion, economics and religion. It was a cornerstone of medieval society, essential for maintaining order and continuity. Yet beneath the formal structures, individual stories of love, loyalty, frustration, and hope unfolded. Understanding medieval marriage challenges us to see beyond modern romantic ideals. It reveals a world where love was both a privilege and a challenge, where loyalty was demanded by blood and oath, and where the heart's yearnings were often held in delicate balance with the demands of throne and family. As we step into this world, we glimpse a landscape where alliances shaped kingdoms, where marriages were the threads that wove together social fabric, and where the dance of duty and desire played out in countless homes, noble and humble alike. The silent strength of women, gender roles in love and loyalty, the ideal versus reality of medieval womanhood. In the tapestry of medieval society, women occupied a paradoxical position, celebrated in poetry and song as paragons of virtue and loyalty, yet often constrained by rigid social structures that limited their autonomy and defined their worth largely through marriage, motherhood, and service. To understand what love and loyalty meant for medieval women, we must unravel the contrast between the idealized roles prescribed by culture and religion and the complex, often challenging realities they lived every day. From the lofty courts of queens and noblewomen to the humble cottages of peasants, medieval women were expected to embody virtues of faithfulness, obedience, and steadfast loyalty. The romanticized ideal of womanhood was deeply rooted in Christian teachings, which exalted qualities such as chastity, humility, and unwavering support of husbands and family. These ideals were reinforced through sermons, literature, and the pervasive influence of the church, which shaped the moral framework of society. The figure of the good wife was central, a woman who managed the household efficiently, raised children with care, and remained loyal to her husband through all hardships. This loyalty was not merely personal, but also social, binding women to their family's honor and legacy. A wife's fidelity was essential to ensure the legitimacy of heirs and the stability of inheritance, making her role critical to the continuation of family lines and the maintenance of social order. Yet the reality behind this ideal was far more nuanced. Women's lives were often marked by limited legal rights, economic dependency, and vulnerability. Under the prevailing laws of coverture, a married woman's legal identity was typically subsumed under that of her husband. Property rights, contracts, and legal decisions were usually controlled by men, leaving women dependent on their fathers, husbands, or male relatives for protection and provision. Noble women faced unique challenges and opportunities. While constrained by marriage contracts arranged for political gain, many exercised significant influence behind the scenes. Queens and noble ladies often acted as regents, managing estates, and even commanding armies in the absence of their husbands. They were patrons of religious institutions, arts, and education, carving out spaces of power and authority within the patriarchal system. The literary tradition of courtly love cast noblewomen in an almost ethereal light, as distant, unattainable objects of desire, inspiring knights and troubadours through their grace and virtue. This idealized image, however, rarely reflected the real emotional and political complexities these women faced. They navigated a world of intrigue, alliance building, and constant negotiation, where loyalty was not simply a matter of personal affection, but a strategic necessity. For common women, the picture was often harsher. Their lives were dominated by labor, both in the fields and in the home, and by the daily struggle to provide for their families. Marriage was a means of economic survival and social stability, but also a source of vulnerability. Widows, in particular, faced precarious positions, often reliant on the goodwill of kin or feudal lords for support. Despite these strengths, women demonstrated remarkable resilience and agency. Many managed households and farms, handled financial affairs, and maintained vital roles within their communities. Through informal networks of female solidarity, sharing knowledge, resources, and support, women carved out spaces of influence often invisible in the official records. Religious devotion offered another avenue for expressing loyalty and love. Many women found purpose and community in convents, where they could wield authority as abbesses or benefactors and pursue spiritual fulfillment beyond the bounds of marriage. For some, the church provided a refuge from the demands of domestic life and a platform for intellectual and charitable work. Love, too, found expression in unexpected ways. While marriage might be arranged, affection and emotional bonds often grew within those frameworks. Letters, poems, and stories reveal tender moments, shared hopes, and mutual support between spouses, families, and communities. Loyalty was not merely duty, but could be a genuine, lived experience that shaped women's identities and relationships. At the same time, the idealized image of the loyal medieval woman obscured darker realities. Women were vulnerable to violence, abandonment, and betrayal. Legal protections were limited, and social stigma often silenced those who suffered abuse or hardship. The tension between societal expectations and lived experience created a complex emotional landscape that women had to navigate with courage and care. Ultimately, medieval womanhood was a landscape of contrasts between ideal and reality, submission and strength, limitation and agency. What love and loyalty meant to medieval women was shaped by these tensions, reflecting a world where devotion was both a source of power and a burden to bear. As we reflect on the silent strength of these women, we gain a deeper understanding of the human stories woven into the grand narratives of history. Their lives remind us that love and loyalty, in any age, are complex forces shaped by culture, circumstance, and individual spirit. Knights of devotion, chivalry and male loyalty, honor, service, and courtly devotion. In the medieval world, where social order was tightly woven by feudal bonds and codes of conduct, the figure of the knight emerged not only as a warrior, but as a symbol of loyalty, honor, and devotion. To truly understand what love and loyalty meant in medieval times, one must delve into the chivalric code, a complex set of ideals that shaped a knight's duties toward his lord, his lady, and his god. These ideals, while often romanticized in literature, represented a deeply ingrained moral framework that governed the actions and relationships of men bound by fealty and honor. The roots of chivalry trace back to the turbulent early Middle Ages, when mounted warriors became the backbone of feudal armies. Over time, this martial role evolved into a cultural ideal that combined military prowess with courtly manners and spiritual devotion. Chivalry was not merely about skill in battle. It was about embodying virtues such as courage, loyalty, courtesy, and piety. For knights, loyalty was a multifaceted pledge, an oath to serve and protect their lord, uphold justice, honor women, and remain faithful to the Christian faith. At the heart of knightly loyalty was the feudal relationship between lord and vassal. This bond was sacred, sealed by ceremony and oath, and underpinned by mutual obligations. A knight swore allegiance to his lord, promising military service and counsel. In return, the lord provided land, protection, and status. This relationship was the foundation of medieval society, creating networks of loyalty that connected all levels of the social hierarchy. Yet, this loyalty was not purely transactional. It was infused with a sense of personal honor and identity. A knight's reputation depended on his faithfulness and bravery. To break an oath was to risk disgrace, social ruin, and even exile. Chronicles and romances abound with tales of knights who upheld their promises against overwhelming odds, their loyalty tested by war, intrigue, and temptation. Chivalry also extended into the realm of courtly love, a refined, often secret code of romantic devotion that celebrated the noble lady as an inspiration for noble deeds. This idealized form of love was as much about admiration and service as it was about personal desire. Knights composed poetry and songs praising the virtues of their beloved, often a married noblewoman, placing her on a pedestal of unattainable perfection. Though many historians debate the real extent of courtly love's practice, its influence on medieval culture was profound, shaping notions of romance, loyalty, and honor. The tension between public duty and private affection created a delicate balance. A knight was expected to demonstrate loyalty and service to his lord and family while cultivating devotion to his lady. These roles were not mutually exclusive, but intertwined in a complex social dance. Knights were also expected to protect the weak, uphold justice, and embody Christian virtues, making their loyalty a reflection of both earthly and divine order. Historical examples illuminate these ideals in action. Consider the legendary King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, whose stories capture the essence of chivalric loyalty, bravery in battle, fidelity to comrades, and respectful love. While Arthur's court may be mythic, it reflects the values that real knights aspire to uphold. Similarly, the writings of troubadours and chroniclers reveal the everyday challenges knights faced as they negotiated loyalty amid warfare, court intrigue, and personal relationships. Yet the reality of knightly life was often harsher than the ideal. Loyalty could be tested by shifting political alliances, personal ambition, and the brutal necessities of war. Knights might find themselves torn between competing obligations, forced to choose between loyalty to their lord and loyalty to family or romantic love. Betrayals and broken oaths were not uncommon, reminding us that chivalry was a guiding ideal rather than an absolute rule. The spiritual dimension of chivalry further complicated this picture. Knights were warriors of Christendom, fighting not only for earthly lords, but also in the name of faith. The church endorsed the chivalric code, emphasizing virtues such as humility, charity, and devotion to God. Many knights took part in crusades, framing their military service as a holy duty. Their loyalty was thus a sacred commitment, linking earthly love and honor to divine salvation. Moreover, knights' loyalty extended beyond individuals to communities and causes. They protected villages, upheld laws, and served as role models. This broader social responsibility reinforced the idea that loyalty was not a private matter, but a public virtue essential to the stability and morality of medieval society. In conclusion, the knights of medieval times were bound by a web of loyalties, personal, social, political, and spiritual. Their chivalric code demanded honor, service, and devotion in all these spheres, shaping a distinctive ideal of masculine love and loyalty. While literature often elevates these ideals into timeless romance, the lived reality was complex and fraught with challenges. Understanding knights' devotion offers us a window into the intertwined forces that shaped medieval life, where love, loyalty, and honor were both guiding lights and heavy burdens. As we reflect on these nights of devotion, we glimpse a world where every vow mattered, every act of service carried meaning, and love was expressed not only in words, but in steadfast loyalty that shaped the very fabric of medieval society. Love among the laborers, peasant experiences of love and loyalty, community, family, and folk traditions. Beneath the towering castles and noble courts of medieval Europe lay a world shaped by toil, tradition, and tightly knit communities, the world of the peasants. Though often overshadowed by the grandeur of knights and lords, the experiences of love and loyalty among the laboring classes reveal a rich tapestry of human connection, grounded in daily hardship and collective resilience. To understand what love and loyalty meant in medieval times, it is essential to look beyond the aristocracy and peer into the homes, fields, and villages where ordinary people forged bonds that sustained them through life's trials. Peasant life was defined by labor, from the earliest dawns spent tending crops to the long evenings around hearth fires, telling stories passed down through generations. Within this demanding rhythm, love and loyalty took root not as grand gestures, but as acts of endurance, cooperation, and shared responsibility. Unlike the ceremonious alliances of nobles, peasant marriages were practical unions, formed to secure survival and build families that could carry on the hard work of the land. Marriage among peasants was often less about ceremony and more about community acceptance and mutual obligation. While the church prescribed sacramental marriage, local customs and folk traditions heavily influenced how these unions were formed and maintained. It was common for young couples to marry in their late teens or early 20s, usually after receiving the approval of elders and the community. Dowries might be modest or non-existent, but the essential foundation was the ability to work together and support each other through the demanding life of serfdom or tenant farming. Loyalty in these communities extended beyond the nuclear family. Village life was deeply interdependent. Neighbors helped one another during harvests, shared tools, and cared for children. This communal loyalty was not merely born of necessity, but was also celebrated in folk songs, tales, and festivals that honored themes of fidelity, sacrifice, and love. These stories provided both entertainment and moral instruction, reinforcing values that helped maintain social cohesion. Within families, the bonds of loyalty were profound. Children were expected to obey their parents and assist in labor, while parents strove to protect their offspring from the hardships of life. Love in this context was often expressed through care and duty rather than overt affection, though letters and poems from the period show that emotional bonds were deeply felt. The experience of love for peasants was practical yet heartfelt, a promise to endure together through famine, disease, and political unrest. Peasant women, much like their noble counterparts, faced strict social expectations, but their roles were often even more demanding. Managing the household, raising children, and participating in farm labor required resilience and strength. Their loyalty was expressed through the relentless care for family and community, often without recognition. Yet these women found ways to maintain personal relationships, using folk customs such as seasonal festivals and communal gatherings to nurture bonds of friendship and courtship. The influence of religion was pervasive in peasant life, shaping ideas of love and loyalty with spiritual meaning. The church's teachings emphasized the sanctity of marriage and the virtues of patience, forgiveness, and faithfulness. Parish festivals and saint days punctuated the agricultural calendar, providing moments for communal celebration and reaffirmation of shared beliefs. These events were crucial in weaving together the social fabric of villages, reinforcing ties that extended beyond kinship. The contrast between peasant experiences and noble ideals is stark but illuminating. While knights and lords might dwell on romanticized notions of courtly love and political alliances, peasants embodied a love rooted in survival and community. Their loyalty was expressed not in poetry or vows of eternal devotion, but in everyday acts: sharing a meal, tending a sick child, standing together in hardship. Historical records and folklore offer glimpses into this world. The rustic ballads of England and France, for example, tell tales of lovers separated by war or social rank, but they also celebrate the simple joys of rural life and steadfast commitment. These narratives reflect a cultural landscape where love and loyalty were inseparable from the land, the seasons, and the communal ties that define peasant existence. In exploring the peasant perspective, we come to appreciate a more grounded, intimate understanding of medieval love and loyalty, one that resonates with universal themes of care, endurance, and belonging. This was a world where promises were made in the glow of firelight, where loyalty was tested in the fields and homes rather than on the battlefield or court, and where love was a quiet but vital force binding families and communities through the centuries. As we settle into this warm and intimate view of medieval life, we begin to understand that love and loyalty, far from being the sole province of nobility or legend, were the very foundations of society itself, expressed in the daily lives of those whose stories often go untold, yet whose hearts beat with the same hopes, fears, and commitments as any other. Divine devotion, religious love and loyalty, faith, monastic life, and spiritual bonds. In medieval times, faith was not just a private matter, it was the very foundation of daily life, community, and identity. Christianity wove itself into every thread of existence, shaping not only laws and customs, but the very ideals of love and loyalty. To understand what love and loyalty meant in medieval times, one must deeply explore the spiritual dimension that gave these concepts their highest expression, a devotion that transcended earthly bonds and reached toward the divine. At the heart of medieval Christianity was a vision of love and loyalty rooted in the teachings of Jesus Christ, whose life and sacrifice were the ultimate model of selfless devotion. This spiritual love extended beyond the human realm, calling believers to a loyalty not only to family or Lord, but to God and the church. It was a loyalty demanding both heart and soul, a covenant that promised salvation and eternal life in exchange for faithfulness and obedience. The monastic movement embodied this ideal of divine devotion in its most radical form. Men and women who chose the monastic life renounced worldly attachments, including romantic and familial love, to devote themselves entirely to God. These monks and nuns lived according to strict rules, such as the rule of St. Benedict, which emphasized obedience, humility, and communal living. Their daily rhythms of prayer, work, and study were acts of love and loyalty, offered as a continuous spiritual sacrifice. Monastic communities were more than isolated religious enclaves. They were centers of learning, charity, and cultural preservation. The monks' loyalty to their order and to God inspired them to copy manuscripts, care for the sick, and serve the poor. Their devotion was a powerful testament to the belief that love, when anchored in faith, could transform both the individual and society. Saints and martyrs held a special place in the medieval imagination as exemplars of divine love and ultimate loyalty. Their stories of suffering, sacrifice, and miraculous intercession offered models for believers struggling with their own trials. Pilgrimages to shrines, the veneration of relics, and the celebration of feast days created a rich symbolic world where spiritual love was both a personal experience and a communal celebration. The language of medieval religious devotion was infused with powerful metaphors of love. The soul was often portrayed as a bride longing for union with Christ, the heavenly bridegroom. This bridal mysticism found profound expression in the writings of figures like Saint Bernard of Clairvaux and later mystics such as Saint Bravma, Teresa of Avila. Their words revealed a vision of love as both passionate and pure, transcending earthly desires to embrace the divine. Religious loyalty also extended into the social and political realms. The church was a unifying institution that demanded allegiance from kings and peasants alike. Oaths taken on holy relics or before the altar were considered sacred bonds, binding rulers to just governance and subjects to obedience. The church's moral authority influenced concepts of justice, charity, and duty, weaving religious love and loyalty into the fabric of medieval governance. Yet, this divine devotion was not without tension. The demands of religious loyalty could conflict with earthly attachments, causing profound struggles for individuals caught between family obligations and spiritual calling. Stories abound of noble children sent to monasteries or of priests and monks wrestling with vows of celibacy in a world where family ties were paramount. Moreover, the church's power could be wielded to enforce loyalty through fear as well as love. Heresy, excommunication, and the Inquisition served as reminders that disloyalty to the faith was a grave offense, threatening not only souls but social order. This dual nature of religious loyalty, both inspiring and coercive, shaped medieval life in complex ways. Despite these challenges, the spiritual bonds forged in medieval religious life remain a testament to humanity's longing for meaning beyond the material world. The monastic cloister, the pilgrim's road, and the saint's shrine all speak to a deep-seated desire to love and be loyal in ways that transcend earthly limits. As you reflect on this profound intertwining of faith, love, and loyalty, imagine the countless lives shaped by these invisible threads, men and women whose hearts beat with a sacred devotion, whose actions echoed a higher calling, and whose stories invite us to ponder the eternal dimensions of love. In the quiet chants of a monastery, or the flickering candlelight before a relic, medieval souls found a love that promised not just survival, but salvation, a loyalty that reached beyond the fleeting to the infinite. Bonds of fealty, feudalism's network of loyalty, lords, vassals, and the social order. Medieval society was woven tightly with a complex tapestry of loyalty, one that stretched far beyond family ties or romantic devotion, anchoring itself firmly in the political and social institution known as feudalism. To understand what love and loyalty meant in medieval times, we must explore this intricate system of bonds, obligations, and mutual dependence that shaped every aspect of daily life and defined personal and political relationships. Feudalism, which dominated Europe from roughly the 9th to the 15th century, was a hierarchical system where land was the key currency of power and loyalty was the glue that held the whole structure together. At its heart lay the relationship between lords and vassals, an exchange of service and protection for land tenure. This was no mere contractual arrangement. It was a solemn bond sealed by oaths, deeply infused with emotional and spiritual weight. When a vassal pledged fealty to a lord, it was more than a legal act. It was a public declaration of loyalty, honor, and mutual responsibility. The ceremony itself was solemn and symbolic, often involving the touching of hands, kneeling, and the swearing of an oath before God. This pledge demanded unwavering allegiance, not only in times of peace, but especially in moments of conflict, where loyalty was tested on the battlefield and beyond. The Lord, in turn, had obligations to protect the vassal and uphold justice within his domain. This reciprocal nature of feudal loyalty was crucial in maintaining social order amid the fragmentation and insecurity of medieval Europe. The bonds of fealty created a network of interdependence where each tier of society was connected through personal loyalty and duty. These ties extended beyond the immediate lord-vassal relationship. Vassals often had their own sub-vassals, creating a layered hierarchy of loyalty that radiated downward and upward, forming a vast web of connections. This network was not just political, it was deeply personal. Loyalty in feudalism carried moral and religious overtones, seen as a sacred duty that mirrored Christian teachings about faithfulness and obedience. In many ways, the feudal bond was a form of love, a commitment that intertwined personal honor with public responsibility. This love was not sentimental, but rooted in trust, respect, and the recognition that survival depended on mutual support. A lord who betrayed his vassals risked rebellion, while a vassal who broke his oath faced disgrace, loss of lands, and social ruin. Feudal loyalty shaped personal lives profoundly. Marriages were often arranged to secure alliances between noble families, intertwining political strategy with kinship ties. Vassals' loyalty to their lord could supersede family loyalty, creating complex emotional and social dynamics. A vassal might be torn between duty to his lord and love for his kin, reflecting the layered nature of medieval loyalty. At the lower levels of society, peasants and serfs were also bound into this network, though their loyalty was often coerced or rooted in survival rather than choice. Their obligations to the lord of the manor involved labor, rents, and obedience, reinforcing the social hierarchy but also fostering community bonds within the manor itself. Feudalism's emphasis on personal bonds over abstract law had both strengths and vulnerabilities. While it created a flexible and resilient social order, it also led to disputes, shifting alliances, and frequent conflicts as loyalty was tested or betrayed. The delicate balance of love and loyalty was a constant negotiation, lived out in courts, battlefields, and households. Throughout medieval literature and chronicles, the ideals and challenges of feudal loyalty are vividly portrayed. Tales of knights and kings, betrayals, and heroic steadfastness reveal how central these bonds were to identity and power. They remind us that love and loyalty in medieval times were inseparable from the social fabric, a force that could build kingdoms or bring them crashing down. As you reflect on the bonds of fealty, imagine a world where every promise carried the weight of life and death, where loyalty was both a sacred trust and a practical necessity. This was a world where love was expressed through honor and duty, where the personal was deeply political, and where the ties that bound men and women shaped the very destiny of nations. The sting of betrayal, consequences of broken loyalty, trust, punishment, and social fallout. In a world where loyalty was the lifeblood of society, betrayal was more than a personal wound. It was a dangerous rupture in the very fabric that held medieval communities and kingdoms together. To understand what love and loyalty truly meant in medieval times, one must grasp the devastating power of broken trust and the far-reaching consequences it carried for individuals and entire realms. Betrayal was often seen as the ultimate sin, a breach of sacred vows that invited not only social condemnation, but sometimes brutal punishment. The medieval mind framed loyalty as a sacred contract, sealed by honor, faith, and sometimes the divine. To break this contract was to invite chaos, endangering not only oneself, but the delicate balance of alliances and order that feudalism depended upon. The sting of betrayal cut deep within families, noble houses, and political factions. One of the most notorious examples in medieval history is the tale of William Wallace's betrayal by Sir John Menteith during the Wars of Scottish Independence. Wallace's capture and subsequent execution in 1305 shook Scotland's fragile fight for freedom, and serves as a chilling reminder of how a single act of treachery could alter the course of history. Betrayal was never merely an act of disloyalty, it was a public spectacle of broken trust. The social fallout could be devastating. Nobles who betrayed their lords faced exile, loss of lands, or even death. The medieval justice system often employed harsh punishments as deterrents, from public shaming and mutilation to execution. Such penalties were meant to reinforce the sanctity of loyalty and dissuade others from following suit. Trust, once broken, was difficult to restore. The medieval world valued reputation above almost all else. A betrayal stained not only the traitor, but their entire family and lineage. This social branding affected marriage prospects, alliances, and the ability to wield influence. The ripple effects could span generations, as the taint of disloyalty was inherited like a curse. At the same time, betrayal was a common thread in medieval politics, where shifting loyalties and power struggles were the norm. Alliances were fragile and often made or broken for expediency rather than true affection or loyalty. Kings and nobles navigated a labyrinth of trust and suspicion, knowing that betrayal could come from the most unexpected quarters. The personal dimension of betrayal added a tragic, emotional layer. Stories from medieval chronicles reveal betrayals within families, between siblings, spouses, and friends. These tales expose the painful human cost of broken loyalty, heartbreak, exile, and sometimes murder. Love, in these cases, was inseparable from the expectations of fidelity and trust. Medieval literature and ballads vividly illustrate betrayal's emotional toll and its consequences. From the tragic romance of Tristan and Isolde to the political intrigues chronicled in Geoffrey of Monmouth's histories, betrayal was a theme that resonated deeply, reflecting the fragile nature of human bonds and the price of disloyalty. Yet, despite the dangers, betrayal was also a catalyst for change. It forced societies to confront the limits of loyalty and the complexity of human motives. Sometimes acts of betrayal led to new alliances or the downfall of tyrants, highlighting how loyalty was not always absolute, but a dynamic and contested force. As you reflect on the sting of betrayal in medieval times, imagine a world where trust was scarce and every oath was a solemn promise, weighted with the possibility of ruin. This was a world where love and loyalty were precious commodities, fiercely protected and painfully lost, where the breaking of a bond could echo across kingdoms and centuries. Stories of the heart, medieval romantic literature, shaping ideals and realities of love. Medieval Europe was a world where stories were more than mere entertainment. They were the threads weaving society's understanding of love, loyalty, and human connection. To truly grasp what love and loyalty meant in medieval times, one must explore the romantic literature that shaped the ideals and often the illusions that danced in the hearts of countless men and women. From the soaring verses of troubadours in southern France to the enchanting tales of knights and ladies in Arthurian legend, medieval romantic literature served as both mirror and mold. It reflected the deeply held values of courtly love, the tensions between duty and desire, and the spiritual dimensions of affection. Yet, these tales also cast long shadows over the realities of daily life, revealing a gulf between poetic idealism and the sometimes harsh practicalities of love. Stories such as the tragic love of Tristan and Isolde, the noble quests of Lancelot and Guinevere, and the chivalric adventures sung by minstrels across castles and villages spread far and wide, painting love as an exalted, often secret, and always transformative force. These narratives embrace themes of longing, sacrifice, secrecy, and loyalty that resonated with medieval audiences who lived within rigid social hierarchies and strict codes of conduct. The troubadours and minnesingers, poet-musicians, were vital to this cultural phenomenon. Traveling from court to court, they sang lyrics of passionate yearning and devotion that transcended social classes. Their songs often celebrated unattainable or forbidden love, a love marked by nobility, honor, and service rather than physical union. This idealized form of love, later called courtly love, was both an emotional refuge and a code of conduct, especially among the nobility. But this poetry was not mere fantasy. It carried social weight and moral instruction, teaching listeners about loyalty to one's beloved, respect for women, and the sacrifices love demanded. The language of longing and unfulfilled desire, so prominent in these stories, shaped expectations and behaviors. It valorized patience, secrecy, and self-restraint, often reflecting the realities of arranged marriages and political alliances that were common in medieval society. Despite the romantic veneer, these tales often dealt with darker themes. Love could be a source of great joy, but also profound suffering and social risk. Betrayal, jealousy, and heartbreak appear frequently in medieval literature, revealing the fragile nature of loyalty and the high stakes involved in matters of the heart. In addition to romantic love, many medieval stories explored the loyalty between friends, family members, and liege lords, weaving a rich tapestry of human connection. The intertwined themes of fidelity and devotion extended beyond romance, permeating all aspects of medieval life. Romantic literature also intersected with spiritual love. The mysticism of the time linked earthly love with divine devotion, suggesting that loyalty and love were virtues that bound humans to God and one another. Many poems and stories drew parallels between romantic yearning and spiritual longing, enriching the cultural fabric of the era. However, the romantic ideals presented in literature did not always reflect lived experiences. Many medieval people, especially those outside the aristocracy, faced practical challenges that complicated love and loyalty. Economic hardship, social expectations, and gender roles often shaped relationships in ways that diverged from poetic ideals. This segment will take you on a journey through these medieval stories and poems, revealing how they helped shape societal understandings of love and loyalty, while also reflecting the tensions between ideal and reality. You'll hear about the power of storytelling to inspire, instruct, and sometimes console, as well as the ways these narratives influence behavior and identity. So settle into this world of passion and poetry, where love was both legend and life, and loyalty the currency by which honor was measured. Here we explore how the stories of the heart left an indelible mark on medieval society, an echo that still resonates in how we understand love and loyalty today. Loyalty in the crucible of war, love and devotion amidst conflict, brotherhood and duty on medieval battlefields. In the tumultuous world of medieval warfare, where the clang of swords and the thunder of hooves echoed across battlefields, loyalty was both tested and forged in the crucible of war. This segment invites you to step into the thick of conflict, to understand how love and devotion endured and transformed amid the chaos, hardship, and violence that shaped so many medieval lives. War was an ever-present reality in medieval Europe. From skirmishes between rival lords to sweeping campaigns launched by kings and emperors, battle was more than mere physical confrontation. It was a complex theater where personal loyalties, honor, and love intertwined in intricate ways. Knights and soldiers alike were bound by oaths of fealty to their lords and comrades, swearing allegiance not just out of duty, but from a profound sense of brotherhood. The code of chivalry, which governed the behavior of knights, emphasized loyalty as a supreme virtue, loyalty to one's liege lord, to one's comrades in arms, and to the ideals of honor and courage. This loyalty was not abstract, it demanded real sacrifices, sometimes the ultimate sacrifice of life itself. Yet within this harsh reality, love and devotion found profound expression. Knights often carried tokens of love, handkerchiefs, rings, or embroidered emblems, from ladies who waited anxiously at home or in castles far from the battlefield. These tokens were more than mere trinkets. They were tangible links to the emotional world beyond war, reminders of personal loyalties that transcended the violence surrounding them. Letters exchanged between lovers or family members brought comfort and strengthened bonds, nurturing hope amid uncertainty. The concept of brotherhood among soldiers was equally vital. Bonds forged in the furnace of combat created loyalties that rivaled familial ties. Men who fought side by side learned to trust and rely on one another utterly. The death of a comrade was a blow not only to morale, but to the very fabric of loyalty that held units together. Stories from chroniclers and poets reveal how comradeship inspired acts of bravery and selflessness, as warriors risked their lives to save their fellows, underscoring how loyalty was inseparable from love in its many forms. Sieges, those prolonged, grueling confrontations, offered another stage where loyalty and love were tested. Defenders endured hunger, disease, and despair, sustained by the hope of reunion and the belief in a just cause. Inside besieged walls, family members clung to each other, their devotion a fragile shield against the encroaching enemy. Outside, the loyalty of vassals and allies could turn the tide, as relief armies assembled to break the siege or negotiate peace. Yet, war also exposed the fractures within these bonds. The pressure of conflict could breed betrayal and shifting allegiances, especially among the nobility where political ambition intertwined with personal loyalty. Historical accounts abound with tales of knights who switched sides, lords who abandoned their vassals, and lovers separated or lost to the chaos of war. Beyond the battlefield, war left scars on relationships at home. The prolonged absence of husbands, fathers, and sons disrupted families and communities. Women often managed estates and households alone, their loyalty and love sustaining families through hardship. The return of a warrior could bring joy or sorrow, reunion or estrangement, revealing the fragile nature of love under the strain of conflict. Religious faith intertwined with these human experiences as soldiers sought divine favor and protection. Prayers, pilgrimages, and vows were expressions of spiritual loyalty that complemented earthly devotion. The ideal of the Knight of Christ combined martial prowess with piety, reinforcing a sacred dimension to loyalty and love in times of war. This segment will guide you through vivid scenes of medieval battles and sieges, revealing how love and loyalty shaped actions and hearts amid the clash of arms. You will hear stories of valor and loss, sacrifice and hope, and come to understand the profound human bonds that endured even as swords were drawn and castles burned. As we journey through the crucible of war, listen closely to the quiet acts of devotion that defied the violence. Letters carried on the wind, whispered prayers in the dark, and friendships sealed by blood. Here, loyalty was not just a duty, but a lifeline, a force that bound warriors to each other and to the loved ones waiting beyond the battlefield's smoke. Prepare to immerse yourself in the stirring, dramatic world where love and loyalty met the harsh realities of medieval warfare, where every sword strike was shadowed by the heartbeat of devotion. The Church's guiding hand, regulation of love and loyalty, marriage, fidelity, and spiritual authority. In medieval society, the Church was far more than a spiritual sanctuary. It was the ultimate arbiter and regulator of love and loyalty. From the grandest cathedrals to the smallest parish churches, the Church's influence permeated every aspect of daily life, shaping how people understood, practiced, and expressed love and fidelity. This segment invites you to explore the profound role the Church played in defining the boundaries of relationships, marriage, and loyalty, as well as the complex tensions between earthly desires and spiritual devotion. Marriage in the Middle Ages was not simply a private affair or a romantic union. It was a sacred institution deeply enshrined in canon law and theology. The Church asserted itself as the guardian of marriage, establishing it as a lifelong, indissoluble bond ordained by God. It regulated who could marry, how marriages should be solemnized, and the duties spouses owed to one another. The sacramental nature of marriage elevated it beyond a mere contract. It was a spiritual covenant, binding souls as well as bodies. Fidelity was central to this ideal. Adultery was not only a breach of trust between spouses, but a sin against God and the social order. The Church's teachings condemned infidelity with moral rigor, emphasizing confession and penance as means to restore both spiritual and social harmony. This moral framework extended beyond the couple, affecting families, communities, and even rulers who were expected to model virtuous loyalty. Confession and penance were pivotal in the Church's regulation of love and loyalty. The confessional became a place where private sins, often related to love, desire, and loyalty, were brought into the light and weighed against divine law. Through penance, believers sought forgiveness and reconciliation, reinforcing the Church's role as the mediator between human frailty and divine grace. This process underscored the tension between the imperfect realities of earthly love and the Church's ideal of perfect spiritual devotion. The Church's influence also shaped broader social expectations. It propagated ideals of chastity, humility, and obedience, particularly for women, reinforcing gender roles within love and loyalty. The Virgin Mary became the exemplar of pure, unwavering devotion, setting a spiritual standard that resonated in both religious and secular contexts. Meanwhile, saints' lives and hagiographies offered models of loyalty and sacrifice, often blurring the lines between earthly and divine love. Yet the church's authority was not uncontested. Popular beliefs, folk customs, and human desires often diverged from official doctrine. Secret marriages, clandestine affairs, and local traditions sometimes challenged ecclesiastical control. This tension created a dynamic interplay between official regulation and lived experience, revealing the complexities of love and loyalty in medieval life. The church also wielded political power through its control of marriage alliances and moral oversight. By sanctioning or annulling marriages, it could influence noble lineages and territorial claims. Royal courts and ecclesiastical tribunals often intersected, reflecting the church's embedded role in governance and social stability. Throughout this segment, you will be guided through the intricate ways the church regulated love and loyalty, from the solemn wedding mass to the quiet confessional, from lofty theological ideals to the everyday struggles of believers trying to reconcile faith and passion. You will gain insight into how spiritual authority shaped personal relationships and societal norms, and how medieval people navigated the delicate balance between sacred duty and human longing. As you listen, consider the profound power of an institution that could sanctify love, condemn betrayal, and command loyalty, not only through earthly laws, but through eternal promises. This is a journey into the heart of medieval life, where faith was inseparable from the bonds of the heart, and the church's guiding hand reached into the most intimate corners of existence. Prepare to explore the church's central role in framing what love and loyalty meant in medieval times, a force as compelling and enduring as the faith it inspired. Orders of the heart, cultural diversity and its impact on love, regional variations, and cross-cultural alliances. Medieval Europe was not a monolith, but a mosaic of diverse cultures, each with its own customs, laws, and traditions, shaping how love and loyalty were understood and practiced. From the rolling hills of England to the sun-dappled courts of Italy and the feudal landscapes of France, regional differences influenced everything from courtship rituals to marriage alliances, revealing the rich complexity of medieval life. This segment invites you to explore how cultural diversity shaped love and loyalty, highlighting both the unique and shared elements across regions. In England, medieval love and loyalty were deeply intertwined with feudal obligations and the burgeoning influence of the church. The Norman conquest in 1066 brought a fusion of Anglo-Saxon and Norman traditions, which together shaped social and marital norms. Noble families emphasized dynastic continuity through arranged marriages designed to secure land and power. At the same time, chivalric ideals from Norman culture introduced the romanticized notions of courtly love, although these ideals often existed in tension with practical concerns of duty and inheritance. France, often considered the cradle of courtly love, offered a different cultural canvas. The troubadour tradition, with its poetry and songs, celebrated refined expressions of romantic devotion. Here, love was often idealized as an ennobling force that transcended social boundaries, even if such ideals were more aspirational than widely practiced. French courts, particularly in regions like Provence and Aquitaine, fostered a culture where love and loyalty were explored as complex emotional and social phenomena. Yet, marriage remained a political tool, and women's roles were framed within both romantic and dynastic expectations. Italy, with its city-states and vibrant trade networks, presented yet another variation. The Italian Renaissance's early stirrings during the late medieval period brought increasing emphasis on individual expression and human emotion. Italian literature and art celebrated romantic love with an intensity that influenced later European culture. Cross-cultural alliances were frequent here, as mercantile wealth and political necessity encouraged marriages between diverse families, including those from different regions and even faiths. These alliances required navigating linguistic, cultural, and religious differences, adding layers of complexity to concepts of love and loyalty. Cross-cultural marriages were both opportunities and challenges. Alliances between different regions or even religions often had political and economic motivations, but they also demanded personal negotiations of identity and loyalty. For example, the marriage of Eleanor of Aquitaine to Henry II of England not only merged vast territories but brought together distinct cultural traditions, influencing both courts' notions of loyalty and love. Religious diversity further complicated matters. In areas where Christian, Jewish, and Muslim communities coexisted, as in parts of Spain and Sicily, love and loyalty were negotiated within overlapping but often conflicting legal and social frameworks. Marriages across religious lines were rare and controversial, yet cultural exchanges shaped attitudes toward fidelity, family, and community. Despite these differences, shared values emerged across medieval Europe. The importance of loyalty to family and lord, the sanctity of marriage as both a social and spiritual bond, and the idealization of love as a virtue guiding human relationships. Yet the lived realities often varied widely depending on regional customs, social status, and individual circumstances. This segment will guide you through a comparative journey, revealing how borders, whether political, cultural, or linguistic, both divided and connected medieval hearts. You will hear stories of alliances forged in distant courts, of love letters crossing borders, and of the delicate dance between personal desire and political necessity. As you listen, reflect on the diversity that enriched medieval concepts of love and loyalty, and the ways cultural exchange both challenged and reinforced these powerful human bonds. Prepare to traverse the varied landscapes of medieval Europe, discovering how love and loyalty transcended and were shaped by the borders of the heart. Public pledges, festivals and displays of loyalty, rituals of love and allegiance. In the tapestry of medieval life, love and loyalty were not solely private affairs, but public performances that echoed through the bustling streets, castle courtyards, and village greens. Festivals, tournaments, and elaborate ceremonies provided stages where devotion and fidelity were displayed, not only as personal virtues, but as social currencies, binding communities and reinforcing hierarchies. This segment explores the vibrant rituals and public pledges that celebrated love and loyalty, revealing their deep symbolism and essential roles within medieval society. Festivals were among the most anticipated events in the medieval calendar, often tied to religious feasts or the changing seasons. These gatherings were lively, colorful, and full of symbolism, where expressions of loyalty took tangible forms. For the nobility, festivals were opportunities to demonstrate allegiance to liege lords or sovereigns through public oaths, gift-giving, and ceremonial gestures. Knights would don shining armor and present themselves in jousts and pageants, their prowess and chivalry on display as tokens of loyalty to their ladies and lords. One of the most captivating expressions of love and loyalty came through tournaments, grand events blending martial skill with social spectacle. Tournaments were not merely tests of combat, they were deeply ritualized ceremonies where knights pledged their devotion to a chosen lady, often crowning her as their queen of the games. These public pledges fused romantic ideals with the chivalric code, reinforcing the intertwined nature of love and loyalty. The jousts and melees, accompanied by heraldic fanfares and elaborate costumes, transformed personal feelings into public declarations, binding the knight's honor to his lady's favor. Beyond the aristocracy, village festivals and fairs were occasions for communal expressions of loyalty and love. Folk dances, singing, and shared meals created a collective experience where family and community ties were renewed and celebrated. Rituals such as hand fasting, a temporary or permanent betrothal ceremony, might take place in these settings, blending legal commitment with festive joy. The public nature of such ceremonies underscored the social importance of loyalty within the community, as bonds forged in sight of neighbors carried profound weight. Marriage ceremonies themselves were grand public affairs steeped in symbolism. The exchange of rings, vows, and the joining of hands before witnesses made love and loyalty visible and binding. The church played a pivotal role in sanctifying these unions, but secular rituals, processions, feasts, and gift exchanges imbued them with communal significance. These events reinforced the idea that love was not just a private feeling, but a social contract with obligations extending beyond the couple to families and communities. Symbolism was everywhere. Tokens such as embroidered handkerchiefs, rings, and favors carried secret meanings of fidelity and affection. The giving and receiving of such gifts, in public or private, became a language of love and loyalty understood by all. For example, a knight's favor, perhaps a scarf or glove, worn during a tournament, was a powerful symbol of his devotion and honor, seen and acknowledged by the wider court. Ceremonies of homage and fealty further demonstrated loyalty in the political realm. Vassals publicly swore allegiance to their lords, pledging service and protection in exchange for land and favor. These rituals often involve symbolic acts such as kneeling, clasping hands, or kissing a lord's ring, all carefully choreographed to display commitment and reinforce social order. Though political, these acts were deeply personal as well, binding individuals through reciprocal loyalty that could involve genuine respect, gratitude, and sometimes affection. Religious festivals added another layer to public expressions of loyalty, where spiritual devotion intertwined with social allegiance. Pilgrimages, saints' days, and masses offered communal opportunities to pledge loyalty not only to earthly lords but to God and the Church. Such moments reinforced the sacred dimension of love and loyalty, extending these bonds into the eternal and the divine. Public pledges and displays of loyalty were more than ceremonial. They were vital to medieval identity and survival. In a world where honor could determine life and death, these rituals forged trust, legitimized relationships, and bound societies together. They transformed abstract feelings into visible acts that shaped the social fabric and reinforced the intertwined destinies of love and loyalty. As you immerse yourself in these vibrant scenes of medieval life, picture the clamor of crowds, the shimmer of armor under sunlight, the murmured oaths, and the heartfelt gazes exchanged amidst the revelry. Feel the pulse of a society where love and loyalty were both deeply felt and publicly declared, a dance of devotion played out on the grand stage of medieval Europe. Prepare to witness the spectacular, the solemn, and the joyous, where hearts pledge themselves not just in whispered promises, but in the eyes of all. Art of affection, love and loyalty in medieval arts, music, visuals, and patronage. In medieval Europe, the intricate threads of love and loyalty were woven not only into the fabric of daily life, but vividly expressed through the era's rich artistic tapestry. Art and music were not mere decoration or entertainment. They served as powerful vessels for communicating the ideals, emotions, and complexities of devotion. This segment explores how love and loyalty found profound expression in medieval artistic forms, from illuminated manuscripts and courtly poetry to religious iconography and the patronage system, revealing the era's cultural values and social dynamics. Music occupied a particularly significant role in portraying love and loyalty. Troubadours, trouvères, and minstrels traveled the courts and towns, performing lyrical songs that exalted romantic longing, knightly devotion, and feudal fidelity. Their verses often celebrated courtly love, a stylized, idealized form of affection that emphasized secrecy, admiration from afar, and noble sacrifice. These songs, woven with rich metaphor and emotion, acted as both entertainment and moral instruction, shaping how audiences understood and aspired to love and loyalty. The melodies and lyrics were crafted to evoke deep feeling, stirring listeners' hearts and reinforcing the ideals of chivalry and devotion. Visual arts similarly conveyed these themes with striking symbolism and detail. Illuminated manuscripts, such as the famed Book of Hours, often depicted scenes of romantic and spiritual devotion side by side, knights offering their service to ladies and saints interceding on behalf of the faithful. The delicate brushwork, vibrant colors, and intricate gold leafing elevated these images beyond mere illustration to acts of reverence and expressions of love's sacred nature. In secular contexts, tapestries and frescoes adorned castle walls with scenes of heroic quests and courtly romance, reminding inhabitants and visitors alike of the values binding their society. Patronage, the commissioning of art and music by nobles, clergy, and wealthy merchants, played a vital role in shaping these cultural expressions. Patrons not only demonstrated loyalty to their sovereigns or religious institutions, but also enacted their own status and affections through art. A noble might commission a portrait or a manuscript to honor a beloved family member or to celebrate a political alliance sealed by marriage. Churches and monasteries, patrons of grand cathedrals and sacred music, expressed spiritual loyalty through the lavish embellishment of their sacred spaces, drawing worshippers into a shared experience of divine love and devotion. The symbolism embedded in medieval art was layered and deliberate. The rose, often a motif in courtly art and poetry, symbolize both earthly love and divine grace, its delicate petals and thorns mirroring the sweetness and pain of devotion. The lion, eagle, and other heraldic animals represented courage and fidelity, qualities essential to both romantic and feudal loyalty. Colors carried meaning as well: red for passion and sacrifice, blue for loyalty and heaven, white for purity and faithfulness. Each hue deepening the narrative woven into every brushstroke and note. This rich interplay of image and sound created a cultural language accessible across social classes, though often interpreted differently by nobles, clergy, and common folk. For nobles, art and music were arenas to display and enact ideals of courtly love and feudal allegiance. For the clergy, the same symbols emphasized spiritual loyalty and divine love. Among the peasantry, folk songs and local art adapted these themes into expressions of communal identity and everyday devotion. Moreover, the arts served as a subtle form of communication within constrained social contexts. The public expression of affection was often limited by rigid hierarchies and moral codes. Through coded language, allegory, and symbolism, artists and musicians could explore forbidden or unspoken feelings, longing, loyalty, heartbreak, without overt scandal. This nuanced expression allowed love and loyalty to permeate medieval culture in ways both visible and hidden. Artistic creations were also memorials, preserving stories of loyalty and love beyond the ephemeral moments of life. Portraits commemorated marriages and alliances. Epitaphs and funerary art honored faithful spouses and loyal vassals. Devotional music sustained spiritual bonds across generations. Through these works, medieval society forged a legacy of affection and allegiance that transcended time. As you imagine the glittering courts where minstrels strummed lutes and knights recited verses beneath the gaze of painted ladies, or the dimly lit chapels where candlelight flickered on illuminated saints and angels, feel the profound resonance of love and loyalty shaping every note, every brushstroke. The arts of medieval times were more than beauty. They were living expressions of the heart's deepest commitments. In this chapter of history, art and music did not simply reflect love and loyalty. They forged them, inspiring individuals and communities to embody these ideals amid the complexities and challenges of medieval life. Bonds below stairs, servants and lower class loyalty, love, duty, and social dynamics. In the sprawling households and manorial estates of medieval Europe, the lives of servants and lower class workers unfolded in a world often overshadowed by the grandeur of their lords and ladies. Yet beneath the imposing stone walls and polished halls, a vibrant and complex web of loyalty, love, and social bonds flourished. This segment delves into the intimate realities of those who lived and labored below stairs, exploring how loyalty shaped their relationships with masters, peers, and family, and revealing the emotional landscapes that often remain hidden in the shadow of medieval hierarchy. To understand the bonds among servants and the lower classes, one must first grasp the social structure they inhabited. Medieval society was rigidly stratified, with peasants, villeins, and domestic workers occupying roles essential to the functioning of estates but rarely acknowledged in grand historical narratives. These individuals, cooks, scullery maids, stable hands, and more, navigated daily life within a framework of duty and dependence, yet their experience of loyalty was layered and deeply human. Loyalty in this context was a complex negotiation. Servants owed obedience and service to their masters, bound by customary law, contract, or simple necessity. But this was not merely a transactional relationship. Many servants developed genuine attachment to their households, forged by years of close proximity, shared hardships, and mutual reliance. Masters, too, often depended on trusted retainers for the smooth running of their estates, and sometimes showed kindness or favor that transcended social distance. This gave rise to a peculiar blend of affection and duty, where loyalty was both practical and heartfelt. Within the servant community itself, bonds of friendship and kinship provided essential support. Living in cramped quarters or common rooms, sharing meals and gossip, servants forged ties that could rival or surpass those with their social superiors. These relationships offered emotional refuge and practical assistance in a life marked by long hours, hard labor, and constant scrutiny. Marriages and courtships among the servant class, though less ceremonious than noble unions, were vibrant expressions of love and partnership, often celebrated quietly amidst the bustle of daily chores. Yet the shadow of social hierarchy could not be ignored. Loyalty to masters sometimes clashed with loyalty to peers or family. Servants could find themselves torn between obedience and moral obligation, especially when witnessing injustice or cruelty. Stories from the period occasionally highlight acts of quiet resistance or brave advocacy, where lower class individuals risk their positions to defend a loved one or stand against wrongdoing. Such acts, though rare and fraught with danger, reveal the strength of personal loyalty beyond imposed social roles. Love and loyalty also extended into the complex networks of patronage and protection. Some servants secured the patronage of powerful household members, gaining privileges, improved status, or security in exchange for unwavering service and discretion. This could foster loyalty akin to feudal bonds, but within the intimate microcosm of the manor. Trusted retainers might be entrusted with delicate tasks, guarding secrets, managing household disputes, or representing the master's interests, further blurring the lines between duty and personal devotion. Religious faith was another pillar, supporting loyalty among the lower classes. Many servants sought solace and guidance in the church, finding in prayer and communal worship a source of strength and moral clarity. Monastic ideals of obedience and humility resonated with their lived realities, and festivals or holy days provided rare moments of communal joy and shared identity. The church often acted as mediator and protector, offering spiritual authority that could temper social tensions and nurture bonds of mutual respect. Despite the hardships, the stories of love and loyalty among servants are marked by resilience and tenderness. Letters, court records, and folk tales preserve glimpses of these intimate worlds, of secret courtships by candlelight, of friendships forged through shared labor and hardship, and of sacrifices made in the name of trust and affection. These narratives remind us that medieval loyalty was not the exclusive province of nobility or clergy, but a universal human experience shaped by circumstance and choice. In conclusion, The Lives Below Stairs reveal a side of medieval love and loyalty that is rich in complexity and emotional depth. Far from mere shadows, servants and lower-class individuals cultivated meaningful relationships that sustained them amid the demands of duty and the strictures of class. Their stories enrich our understanding of medieval society, highlighting the enduring power of loyalty and love in even the most constrained of circumstances. In the shadowed tapestry of medieval life, where the ever-turning wheels of power, family, and faith shaped every moment, the role of friendship and non-romantic loyalty often went unheralded in the grand chronicles. Yet, beyond the bloodlines and matrimonial alliances that defined status and survival, there existed a vital, quieter realm of companionship, whispered vows and secret bonds that forged lives together in trust, solidarity, and shared purpose. These relationships, while not marked by the romantic fervor or kinship ties that dominate our modern understanding of loyalty, were nonetheless powerful forces in medieval society, offering emotional sustenance, political alliances, and social stability. Understanding the significance of these bonds opens a window into the lived experience of both nobles and commoners, revealing how friendship and sworn brotherhood help people navigate the perilous landscapes of the Middle Ages. The medieval concept of friendship extended far beyond casual affection. It was often sanctified by ritual and solemn oath, imbuing it with a gravity comparable to familial ties. Among the nobility, sworn brotherhoods or compagnonnage were formalized alliances that transcended kinship, binding men in mutual support that could be as binding as blood. These relationships were often sealed by oaths sworn in the presence of witnesses, invoking God as a witness to their pledge of fidelity. Such vows carried both spiritual and social weight, implying a readiness to defend one another's honor, property, and even lives. This was no mere sentimental friendship, but a practical and strategic bond, an essential tool in a world where survival often hinged on the strength of one's allies. One of the most renowned examples of such sworn loyalty is found in the tale of William Marshall, a towering figure of the 12th and early 13th centuries, often called the greatest knight of his age. Marshall's life was shaped not only by his martial prowess, but also by his deep work of friendships and alliances. His sworn loyalty to King Henry II and later to Henry's sons, was a combination of personal devotion and political necessity. But beyond this lie numerous examples of Marshall's alliances with other knights and nobles who pledged their faith to him. These bonds were critical in an era of frequent civil wars and shifting loyalties, providing a scaffold upon which men could build reputations and secure their fortunes. But sworn brotherhood and loyalty were not the exclusive domain of the aristocracy. Among common folk, craftsmen, merchants, soldiers, and peasants, friendship and non-kin bonds played a similarly crucial role. Guilds, for instance, functioned not only as economic and professional associations, but also as social networks that fostered loyalty and mutual aid. Members often viewed themselves as part of a brotherhood, bound by shared interests, rituals, and sometimes by sworn oaths. In towns and villages, neighbors relied on each other for protection, labor, and emotional support, forging bonds that could rival those of family. Beyond practicality, these friendships offered emotional refuge in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. The medieval period was marked by high mortality rates, frequent wars, famine, and disease. In such times, the companionship of trusted friends provided solace and stability, a rare source of constancy amid turmoil. Monastic chroniclers occasionally noted friendships between monks as sources of spiritual strength, and secular tales from troubadours and poets often celebrated the deep affections men held for their comrades in arms. These relationships were often suffused with a language of devotion and honor that might seem familiar to modern readers as expressions of love, though this was a love of a distinctly different kind, forged in the fires of shared danger and loyalty rather than romance. In fact, the language surrounding these bonds can appear strikingly intimate. Medieval Latin and vernacular languages contain terms such as amicitia, friendship, and fidelitas, faithfulness, that carried rich connotations, at times overlapping with the language of fealty and even conjugal affection. This blending of vocabulary reflects the complexity of loyalty in the medieval mind, where social, political, and emotional allegiances were intertwined. The closeness of some friendships could lead to lifelong alliances, inheritance agreements, and political coalitions that shaped local and even national histories. One striking instance of a deeply bonded friendship that had lasting historical impact is the relationship between Richard the Lionheart and Philip II of France. Despite their political rivalry and eventual enmity, during the Third Crusade, their cooperation and mutual respect were essential for the campaign's successes. Their temporary alliance, while born of necessity, also speaks to the broader medieval idea that friendships and loyalties could bridge dynastic divides, even if only fleetingly. At a lower social level, the brotherhoods of soldiers, particularly the knights who traveled and fought together in the Crusades, formed lifelong bonds that outlasted kingdoms. Among the common folk, historical records, though less abundant, give glimpses into the power of friendship to shape daily life. Legal documents sometimes reference letters of friendship or friendship bonds that protected individuals and their properties. These arrangements could protect someone from harm, guarantee assistance in times of need, or establish trading partnerships. In an era where legal protections were often uncertain, such informal agreements provided a crucial safety net. For example, a farmer might swear loyalty to a neighboring miller in exchange for a guaranteed right to grind grain, while the miller relied on the farmer's oath to honor payments and defend his interests against rivals. Friendship also had a spiritual dimension, with many medieval people believing that true loyalty was part of a moral and religious ideal. Saints, lives, and hagiographies often emphasize the theme of holy friendship, where bonds between individuals reflected divine love and mutual support on the path to salvation. This belief reinforced the idea that friendships were not simply worldly ties, but sacred duties, and breaking such vows was seen as both a social and spiritual betrayal. These ideas extended to the notion of hospitality, an essential aspect of medieval life tied closely to friendship and loyalty. Welcoming a stranger into one's home was a sacred trust, and guests were often treated as part of a temporary extended family. This hospitality was both practical, providing safety in a dangerous world, and symbolic of the bonds that connected disparate communities. The concept of guest friendship which could create lasting bonds between unrelated families or even across borders, was an important social mechanism for fostering peace and alliance. Looking deeper into literature and poetry, the portrayal of friendship reflects its esteemed place in medieval culture. The Arthurian legends, for example, revolve heavily around the brotherhood of the Knights of the Round Table, a fellowship bound by loyalty, honor, and mutual respect. These stories highlight the tension between personal friendship and courtly duty, illustrating the complex dynamics of loyalty in a world rife with intrigue and conflict. Likewise, troubadour poetry often celebrated the bonds between men, framing friendship as a noble and worthy pursuit. Yet these friendships and sworn bonds were not without their complications. As much as they could unify, they could also divide. Feuds and vendettas sometimes erupted from broken friendships or betrayals, with personal loyalty clashing against political expediency. The delicate balance between family allegiance and sworn brotherhood could create bitter conflicts, forcing individuals to choose sides in battles, both literal and metaphorical. In reflecting on these whispered vows and secret bonds, we gain a richer understanding of medieval life, one that acknowledges the profound human need for connection beyond the ties of blood and romantic love. Friendship in the Middle Ages was a complex and vital institution, offering a lifeline of trust, solidarity, and emotional refuge amid a world often marked by uncertainty and violence. Whether through the rituals of sworn brotherhoods, the quiet support of guilds, or the sacred hospitality of homes, these non-romantic loyalties shape the contours of medieval society in ways that resonate deeply even today. Indeed, the enduring legacy of medieval friendships and loyalties reminds us that the human heart has always sought companionship, not only in family or romance, but also in the steady, steadfast presence of friends, those who choose to stand beside us, bound not by birth or passion, but by a conscious and profound promise to hold fast in the face of all trial. Justice and hearts, medieval laws on love and loyalty, marriage, fidelity, and punishment. In medieval Europe, love and loyalty were not merely matters of personal feeling or social expectation, but were deeply entwined with law and justice. The medieval legal system, far from a modern conception of private emotion, treated relationships, especially marriage and fidelity, as matters of public concern, crucial to maintaining social order, lineage, and property rights. This segment examines the legal codes and court practices that governed love and loyalty, revealing how medieval justice sought to regulate hearts as much as hands, and how breaches of loyalty could provoke severe consequences. Marriage, the cornerstone of medieval social and economic life, was profoundly regulated by both secular and ecclesiastical courts. Unlike the romantic ideal of marriage by mutual affection, medieval unions were legal contracts with significant political, economic, and social ramifications. The church wielded immense authority over marriage laws, asserting that a valid marriage required mutual consent, public declaration, and often a religious ceremony. Consent was paramount. A marriage without it could be annulled or deemed invalid. Yet within this framework, the law also recognized arranged marriages, especially among the nobility, where family alliances and dowries often overshadowed personal desires. The enforcement of marital fidelity was a key concern. Adultery was seen as a breach not only of personal trust, but of social stability, threatening inheritance lines and alliances. Both men and women could be accused, though the consequences and social stigma often weighed more heavily on women. Ecclesiastical courts, which dealt with moral and spiritual matters, imposed penances and could order public acts of contrition. Secular courts might impose fines, public shaming, or corporal punishment, depending on local laws and the social status of the parties involved. Beyond adultery, the law addressed issues of abandonment, desertion, and failure to provide for one's spouse or children. Desertion by a husband, though less frequently punished, could lead to legal separation or ecclesiastical intervention. A wife abandoning her husband was more controversial and often required just cause, such as abuse or neglect. Children born out of wedlock were generally considered illegitimate, with limited rights of inheritance, emphasizing the legal importance of loyalty within marriage. Family loyalty, encompassing filial duty and household obedience, was similarly enshrined in law. Children were expected to obey and support their parents, especially in later life, while parents had legal authority over their minor children and their marriage prospects. Disobedience or rebellion could result in penalties or disinheritance. These laws reinforced the broader social hierarchy and the continuity of family honor and property. The courts also dealt with more intimate aspects of loyalty, such as breaches of promises of marriage or betrothal. A broken promise could lead to lawsuits for breach of contract, where damages might be awarded to compensate for lost honor, financial harm, or emotional distress. This legal recognition underscores how seriously medieval society regarded loyalty in personal relationships, not merely as private commitments, but as binding obligations with tangible social effects. In matters of love beyond marriage, the legal system intersected with social norms in complex ways. The rise of the courtly love tradition, with its secretive and often extramarital attachments, presented challenges to public morality and legal authority. While the law did not codify courtly love, it could criminalize certain behaviors linked to it, such as adultery or seduction, but often struggled to police the subtle social games played among nobles and troubadours. Punishments for breaches of loyalty varied widely, influenced by local custom, the party's social rank, and the nature of the offense. Public humiliation, such as stocks, pillories, or branded letters, served both as penalty and deterrent. More severe punishments could include imprisonment, fines, exile, or even corporal punishment. For nobles, political repercussions, loss of favor, forfeiture of lands, or forced marriage annulments were common tools to enforce loyalty and deter betrayal. The church's role in regulating love and loyalty extended beyond marriage. Confession and penance provided spiritual remedies for breaches of faithfulness, reflecting a vision where earthly justice and divine mercy intertwined. The sacramental nature of marriage meant that sins against fidelity were sins against God, requiring moral reconciliation as well as social restitution. Courts also grappled with cases of domestic violence, though legal protections for women were minimal and often mediated through ecclesiastical courts, emphasizing reconciliation rather than punishment. Nevertheless, the very presence of such cases in court records highlights the tensions between ideals of loyalty and the harsh realities of medieval domestic life. In sum, medieval laws surrounding love and loyalty were comprehensive and multifaceted, reflecting the inseparability of personal relationships from social, economic, and spiritual structures. The justice system sought to preserve social harmony by enforcing contracts of marriage and family, punishing betrayals, and guiding moral conduct. This legal framework both reflected and reinforced medieval ideals, emphasizing that love and loyalty were not just private emotions, but public duties with profound consequences. Shift views on love. Emerging individualism and new ideals. The transition from the medieval era to the Renaissance marked profound transformation in Western conceptions of love and loyalty, signaling the dawn of new ideals rooted in humanism, individualism, and a renewed celebration of human emotion. Whereas medieval society largely framed love and loyalty through communal, hierarchical, and religious lenses, the Renaissance heralded a shift toward personal expression, romantic idealism, and the complexities of individual desire. This segment explores how this cultural evolution reshaped relationships and redefined the very nature of love and loyalty. Medieval views on love had been deeply embedded in social and religious frameworks. Marriage was primarily a social contract. Loyalty was anchored in feudal bonds or family duty, and romantic love, when recognized at all, was often idealized in stylized forms such as courtly love, which emphasized unattainable devotion and ritualized secrecy rather than mutual affection. Yet, by the late 14th and early 15th centuries, the Renaissance began to challenge these conventions with a growing emphasis on the individual's inner life, emotions, and autonomy. The rise of Renaissance humanism played a pivotal role in this transformation. Humanist scholars sought to revive classical texts and philosophies, emphasizing the dignity, worth, and potential of the individual. Thinkers such as Petrarch, often called the father of Renaissance humanism, infused their poetry and letters with deeply personal reflections on love, longing, and the complexity of human relationships. Petrarch's sonnets to Laura, for example, combine passionate admiration with introspective nuance, portraying love not as mere duty or social performance, but as a profound, individual experience that engaged the whole person. This literary shift reflected broader social changes. The waning of feudalism and the rise of city-states fostered greater social mobility and personal choice. Economic changes enabled new classes of merchants, artists, and scholars to seek partners beyond the rigid confines of arranged noble marriages. While marriage remained an important institution, the Renaissance began to valorize companionate marriage, where affection, mutual respect, and even romantic love gained importance alongside practical considerations. Art and literature of the period vividly illustrate this shift. Renaissance painters, sculptors, and poets celebrated not only divine or allegorical love, but the beauty and complexity of human emotion. Works such as Botticelli's The Birth of Venus or Shakespeare's sonnets reveal a new sensibility that embraced sensuality, individuality, and psychological depth. This was a stark contrast to medieval art's often symbolic or didactic representations of love and loyalty. Despite these changes, the Renaissance did not entirely discard medieval traditions. Courtly love's language and motifs persisted in literature, even as authors explored new themes of personal agency and emotional authenticity. Loyalty remained a cherished virtue, but it increasingly encompassed fidelity, not only to family and lord, but to one's own conscience and desires. This created tensions, as individuals navigated between social expectations and emerging ideals of personal freedom. The expanding role of the Church continued to shape these evolving notions. The Catholic Church's doctrines on marriage and fidelity remained influential, yet Renaissance thinkers also began to question established religious authorities and explore secular understandings of love. The Protestant Reformation, emerging in the 16th century, further complicated this landscape by promoting ideas such as marriage as a partnership of equals, which subtly challenged medieval patriarchal norms. In practice, the Renaissance ideal of romantic love coexisted with traditional arranged marriages and social alliances. Nobles still forged unions to consolidate power and wealth, but poetry, music, and art increasingly celebrated personal desire and emotional fulfillment. The courtly rituals of devotion evolved into more open expressions of affection, courtships became more public, and love letters flourished as a literary genre. Furthermore, the Renaissance's emphasis on education and self-cultivation encouraged individuals to understand themselves and their emotions more deeply. Philosophers and writers debated the nature of love, whether it was primarily spiritual or physical, divine or human. This intellectual inquiry fostered a richer, more nuanced discourse on loyalty, encompassing not only social duty, but personal integrity and emotional honesty. This cultural shift also influenced gender dynamics. While women's social positions remained constrained, Renaissance literature and art increasingly portrayed women as complex individuals capable of desire, intellect, and moral agency. Figures like Christine de Pizan challenged prevailing misogynistic views, advocating for women's education and moral worth, thereby expanding the discourse on love and loyalty to include women's experiences and voices. However, it is important to acknowledge that these Renaissance ideals were often the preserve of educated elites and urban centers. For many rural and lower-class people, medieval patterns of marriage, loyalty, and love persisted well into the early modern period. The full democratization of romantic individualism was a gradual, uneven process influenced by social class, geography, and cultural context. In conclusion, the Renaissance marked a pivotal moment in the evolving history of love and loyalty, introducing new ideas that emphasized the individual's emotions, intellect, and autonomy. This period sowed the seeds for modern conceptions of romantic love and personal loyalty, blending inherited medieval traditions with humanist ideals and artistic innovation. The dawn of change in love and loyalty reflected broader transformations in society, culture, and thought, illuminating the complex interplay between continuity and innovation in the human heart. What medieval love and loyalty teach us today: reflection and continuity. As we draw the curtain on this exploration of love and loyalty in medieval times, it is both fitting and enlightening to pause and reflect on the enduring lessons these complex, sometimes contradictory ideals offer us today. While the medieval world, with its castles, chivalry, rigid social hierarchies, and deeply religious worldview, might seem distant and alien, the themes woven through its conceptions of love and loyalty continue to resonate within modern hearts and societies. By understanding medieval love's nuances, we gain insight not only into history, but into the very human struggles and aspirations that persist across centuries. At first glance, medieval love and loyalty might appear foreign or even archaic, defined largely by duty, hierarchy, secrecy, and rigid roles. Yet beneath these structures lies a profound yearning for connection, trust, and meaning that is timeless. Whether expressed in the gallant deeds of knights, the secret songs of troubadours, or the steadfast bonds within peasant families, love and loyalty in medieval society reveal the universal human desire to belong, to be seen and cherished, and to uphold promises that give life coherence and honor. One of the most significant lessons the medieval period imparts is the recognition of love and loyalty as multifaceted and deeply intertwined with social context. Love was rarely just a private affair of the heart. It was embedded in political alliances, religious duties, economic survival, and community cohesion. Loyalty, similarly, was not merely personal faithfulness, but a vital thread in the social fabric, binding lords to vassals, husbands to wives, friends to comrades, and individuals to God. This holistic understanding challenges modern notions that often isolate love as purely romantic or loyalty as mere personal allegiance. In a world where arranged marriages were common and social obligations paramount, love found expression through subtle, often coded means, through poetry, gestures, and ritualized devotion. The idealized concept of courtly love, with its blend of secrecy, yearning, and respect, may seem distant, yet it highlights the creative ways humans seek intimacy and emotional fulfillment within constraints. Today, we see echoes of this in the nuanced negotiations of modern relationships, balancing societal expectations, personal desires, and cultural norms. The medieval emphasis on honor and duty offers another enduring perspective. In a time when breaking loyalty could mean ruin or death, trust was the currency of relationships and communities. While contemporary society often prizes individual freedom, the medieval worldview invites us to consider how loyalty to family, friends, community, and ideals creates a foundation for stability and meaning. It reminds us that promises kept and bonds honored are as vital now as they were then, fostering social trust and personal integrity. Furthermore, the medieval experience teaches us about the gendered dimensions of love and loyalty, how women's roles, often constrained by social structures, were nevertheless vital in shaping family, culture, and even political power. The silent strength of queens, noblewomen, and commoners alike reveals resilience and agency, reminding us to recognize and honor the varied ways love and loyalty manifest across gender and social lines. This historical awareness enriches contemporary conversations about equality, partnership, and the diverse expressions of devotion. Religion's pervasive role in medieval love and loyalty, with its intertwining of spiritual and earthly devotion, invites modern reflection on the sacred dimensions of human relationships. While many today embrace secular perspectives, the medieval synthesis of faith and love encourages contemplation of how shared values and moral commitments underpin lasting bonds. The symbolism of saints, martyrs, and monastic vows, though distant in form, echoes in our continued search for transcendent meaning within love and loyalty. Importantly, the medieval era also reveals the consequences when love and loyalty faltered, whether through betrayal, broken vows, or political treachery. These stories, filled with tragedy and drama, underscore the fragility and preciousness of trust, recognizing that loyalty is both a gift and a responsibility. The gradual evolution from medieval to Renaissance, and ultimately modern, conceptions of love and loyalty illustrates the dynamic nature of human culture. We inherit from the past a tapestry of ideals and practices that shape how we understand and live love today. By studying medieval experiences, we appreciate the roots of romantic idealism, companionate marriage, and personal loyalty, as well as the enduring challenges of balancing desire, duty, and social expectation. In sum, medieval love and loyalty offer timeless lessons about the complexity of human connection. They teach us to value commitment not just as obligation, but as a profound expression of identity and trust. They remind us that love flourishes within both constraint and freedom, that loyalty sustains communities and personal bonds alike, and that the human heart, across ages, seeks meaning through relationship. As we reflect on these enduring truths, may we carry forward the medieval legacy, not as an artifact of a bygone era, but as a living dialogue between past and present. In understanding how our ancestors loved and remained loyal, we better understand ourselves, the societies we build, and the love we strive to nurture in our own time. Medieval love and loyalty were complex ideas deeply connected to the social, political, and religious worlds of the time. Unlike today's mostly romantic view of love, in the Middle Ages, love often had many layers, mixing duty, honor, family ties, and spiritual devotion. One of the most famous ideas from medieval times was courtly love. This was a kind of idealized and often secret love, celebrated by poets and troubadours. Knights would dedicate songs and poems to noble ladies, expressing deep admiration and longing. Yet this love was rarely straightforward or public. It was more about respect, mystery, and devotion than actual romantic relationships. It showed how love could be both emotional and tied to social roles. Marriage during the Middle Ages was usually not about romance, but political and social alliances. Families, especially noble ones, arranged marriages to gain power, land, or peace between rival groups. Dowries and negotiations were important parts of these deals. Love and personal desire were often less important than duty and obligation, creating tensions between the heart and social expectations. Women's experiences of love and loyalty were especially complex. Medieval society placed strict roles on women, expecting them to be loyal wives and mothers, often sacrificing personal freedom. While literature sometimes portrayed idealized women as pure and devoted, the reality for many women, queens, noblewomen, and commoners, was filled with challenges and limited choices. Still, many women showed great strength and influence within these limits. Knights and men followed the chivalric code, which demanded loyalty not only to their lords and ladies, but also to God. This code shaped ideas about honor, service, and how men should show their love through bravery and protection. However, real life didn't always match the ideal, and knights faced difficult choices between personal loyalty and political pressures. For peasants and lower classes, love and loyalty were more about family bonds and community. Despite their hard lives, they built strong relationships through marriage customs, folk traditions, and mutual support. Their stories reveal the warmth and resilience of ordinary people who valued loyalty within their social circles. The church had a powerful influence on love and loyalty by defining moral rules for marriage, fidelity, and spiritual devotion. Many people expressed love through religious faith and monastic life, seeing loyalty to God as the highest form of commitment. The church also controlled how marriages worked and punished those who broke vows. Feudalism created a system where loyalty was the foundation of social order. Lords and vassals exchanged promises of service and protection, linking political power to personal bonds. Betrayal in this system was dangerous and often led to severe punishment or social ruin, showing how fragile trust was in medieval society. Medieval literature, including romances and ballads, shaped how people imagined love, blending idealism with reality. These stories influenced cultural values and kept alive ideas of devotion, sacrifice, and passion. War and conflict tested loyalty in harsh ways. Knights and soldiers had to balance brotherhood, duty, and love while facing the dangers of battle. These pressures revealed both the strength and vulnerability of human relationships under stress. Over time, the rigid medieval ideas about love and loyalty evolved toward Renaissance views that emphasized individual choice and romantic love. But many medieval themes, such as the importance of trust, commitment, and the intertwining of love with social and spiritual life, continue to inform how we understand relationships today. In short, medieval love and loyalty teach us that these feelings are never simple. They are shaped by the world around us, by family, society, faith, and duty. By studying these past ideals, we gain insight into our own relationships and the timeless human desire for connection, trust, and meaning.